Hello. Hello. Let's take a look at my shirt. It's cute. Anyways, more important matters. We are here to talk about Gummo, the 1998. Let's fact check that. 1997. 1997 experimental drama. Feature debut by I thought it was Hermione. Harmony Korrine. Okay, I really want to say Hermione. Sorry. Sorry to this director. Sorry to that man. Um, but I'm here to talk about Gummo today. And I'm talking mainly about what I think I wish Gummo was, uh, rather than the film I saw. And this is like a little bit of, it's not really much of a review, honestly, as much as it's more like a thoughts after reading it, after watching it, I think is a better way. After watching Gummo, this is more so my reaction afterwards. So when I watched, I came in here sort of blind, watching the movie blind. I've heard some controversy, but really I wasn't sure or researching deeply of what all that was. I'm glad, for better or for worse, that I came in fully blind. Only thing I really know is that it was Chloe Sevigny. Sevigny. Y'all are not gonna drag me for pronounce these names wrong, okay? Chloe Sevigny is all I know is Chloe Sevigny was in this film. That was it. Walking into this, and I'm gonna lie, we're barely like a couple minutes to the film, and I see animal torture, animal murder, animal cruelty. And I'm like, wow, okay, I was not expecting this. And honestly, that it was very discomforting watching the animal cruelty on screen. Thank goodness it's not real. I had to like research afterwards. I was like, please tell me this is not real, and it's not. So it helped those scenes better in my opinion because obviously no animals were hurt. But I just have a deep psychological fear of watching animals dead, even if they're not like roadkill, like they just like die naturally. I'm like, I can't take it. I don't know what's wrong in my brain that just overreacts and freaks out about that depiction. So being hit with that multiple times in a film it was a great experience actually. I would recommend doing that again if you have that specific trauma. But being hit with that multiple times in the beginning and throughout the entire film, I really thought there was going to be something more in depth. And not just the animal cruelty. I think the animal cruelty is sort of the tip, I would say, like the tipping point of like my issues with this film at overall. Background story, I am from the rural South. I lived in a very rural town, Alabama. Um, probably cut that out. I don't even know where I'm at. But I'm from a rural town, Alabama, pretty much. And there's part of me that is really drawn to seeing an unapologetic viewing of very rural towns that seem like you're pretty much stepping into a time machine. That's really what it feels like when you're in a very rural area, particularly in the South. But this takes place in Xenia, Ohio, and it does have a bit of the same feeling of being in like Alabama. Um, and so this is like, particularly this town is Xenia, Ohio, that was recently at the time of shooting been torn up by a tornado. So obviously there's so much devastation in this town. And that's I'm gonna touch upon this a little later. There's a lot of devastation in this town. This town is very decrepit. It's clearly going by the wayside. There's no resources in this town. You can tell from the people in the town, from the settings that if you research further, either real settings. They did not mess up the settings. Either these dilapidated homes that are barely being held together, like rotting, essentially with like roaches and bugs. And there's even like uh, research, I'm not research, even like different articles about how the crew would even shoot in certain homes because they were so bad. So this is Gummo. This is the setting of Gummo. You have that, and you have these blatantly unfair depictions of disabled people. Uh, very cruel, deeply ableist um, depictions. I mean, obviously there's like racism as well that is handled in extremely bizarre ways that I'm almost a loss of words of what was going on in the writing and in the production of this film. And so we follow our primary character. Yes, so we follow Bunny Boy, and we're also following Solomon. Solomon is who I want to focus on, and when I'm watching this movie, I did not do deep research into this actor or any sort of physical ailment he may be having. I apologize if he does not have any. I do think his physicality plays a lot into the character, and I think the overall disturbing vibe they're trying to give off in this movie, which is terrible to say the least. To use someone's physicality to as a layer of like the monstrous depiction of the people of the town, and there's a long history of just showing physically disabled people in monstrous ways to depict like to emphasize the evilness of the character, the setting, whatever the case may be. And this is movie does not shy away from that even a little bit. There's so many depictions of this, which with the main character Solomon, I believe that the man who had dwarfism, the black man who had dwarfism in the film, just the way they are exploited, their physicality is exploited to add to the corruptness of this town. It's really gross, and I think this is a large part of why I'm sort of disappointed in this film and its depiction of a rural setting. I think there's so much text, subtext that he's playing with that I think can be explored, but I don't think the director explores these themes or these very difficult subject matter with any sort of real care. I think he sort of uses them solely as shock value. Like, also, there's a depiction of child prostitution, which I assume these are children. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they're, again, between two visibly disabled people, and it's a bit hard to watch, and I just struggle to understand what is the point of so many of these things. I think there's a lot of irresponsible writing uh, that's occurring throughout this entire film that I think really flattens and misdirects the message that maybe the director is going for. I mean, I think it is interesting to depict a town that a lot of people are morally bankrupt, let's be honest. If you're someone from a rural area, maybe it's not your experience, but I know for me, living in a small town, especially in the deep south, there people have like the morality of the people should be questioned very much. It's a lot of terrible things that occur in very rural, small towns that are isolated from a big city or a metropolitan that just is horrible. It's horrifying. And I think there is a layer of horror that I think Gummo is trying to display, but really fails at it because I think it seems like the film is more interested in being shocking than saying having any real commentary about a town that's been decimated by, you know, natural disasters and obviously not getting any resources from this local state government to repair. I mean, as a result, you obviously see people who, as a result of all these lacks of resources, it really does impact the personality of the people, individuals living in towns like these. And I think when it seemed like, I think when you are in a town with a lack of resources and you don't have access to larger cultural shifts that are more progressive, it really does feel like you are walk into a, for lack of a better word, you are sort of stuck in like some sort of horror film where everyone has very, very black and white thinking, extremely conformist, hyper religious, extremely conservative thoughts amongst the populace. And I, Gummo is, I feel like Gummo's trying to point that out, but it's doing it in such a irresponsible way that it just loses itself. Like it, just so much of it just loses itself. It's rather shock you with how depraved the people are, um, through physical disability, through the dilapidation of the setting. Let's just get into the dilapidation of the setting. This is a real place that was shot at. This was not sets built where they did not destroy a house. These are like what people generally lived in. And he used actors from these towns as well. And I think that displays them so much. It just it comes off more as exploitative than anything else. When you're showcasing people in abject poverty and showing them in roles that, it's so funny. This is a cult classic, and that like, yeah, the only person who has a career after all this is Chloe Sevigny. None of these other actors are even able to lift themselves out of their situation. And if I'm sure if I had to research this town probably did not benefit from the making of this film. Please, someone in the comments let me know. But I think Gummo really does fail to. It fails to tell something that's far more compelling. There's something there in Gummo that is a gem that is not being uncovered at all. Um, I think there's many ways to depict physically disabled people in rural settings with no resources and a lot of bigotry. And when it's that's more responsible and sensitive to that subject matter. I think there's ways to show child prostitution or very dark depictions of rape, molestation without leaning into shock value, which is, it's just gross, and it really does reduce these people into caricatures that you're supposed to be disgusted with rather than looking at them as human beings who generally don't have any resources, have been failed by their local and your state government. I think there's a responsibility there that filmmakers should show towards the subjects that they're using, and I think that's just completely disregarding Gummo. On top of that, and all the animal torture, like, oh God, that's like, I just think about it. It's like, for me, I'm like, if someone is killing a bunch of cats, like, I'm from Alabama, okay? Listen, the only place worse than Alabama is Mississippi. If there was people killing cats, there would not be an entire community that was just fine with that. Not to say that Emi would be like, ooh, let me call animal, what's it called? Animal control or some shit. PETA. No one's gonna do that. Like, so I mean, I think the apathy is there, but like, people just wouldn't casually be having a conversation why someone hits cats with sticks, burn up cats and sticks, or like a cat just like being beaten while decomposing in front of like a group of people. Yeah, that's a little. And those, honestly, those things wouldn't bother me as much. But I feel like that is just like the sort of cherry on top. It's like that's the gateway into the issues of the film. It's like the cat torture and killing. It's just sort of there to shock you, not really there to comment on the very violent nature that rural areas can sort of engulf, especially male boys into, and men into. Okay, I think that's all I have to say about Gummo. This was not a thorough review. Uh, if you want to watch this film, honestly, I still think you should. I think people should watch this film, not because I think this film depicts uh, uh, any of the subject matter as well. I think it's just a good, I think we could see where this film is going and perhaps inspire someone else to make a better depiction of rural life that is unapologetic about how people are. Because, listen, being from the rural South is not for the faint of heart. It really isn't. And I'm sure people in Xenia, Ohio, who either there or have left could probably say the same thing, that it's really not that great. But I think there is a responsibility you should have when you are specifically being a, I guess not a Hollywood director, but you're a director coming in to this town and using these people for your film as like caricatures. There's some responsibility there, and that was not had. So that was all I have to say. This was probably jumbled, but I promise next time this might be slightly scripted.